Hello and welcome back to the show. I am so excited for this conversation about self-love, which is near and dear to my heart, especially in February, the month of love. And I'm joined today by my chosen sister, Andrea Luzon, Legacy Liberator coach. And I am, first of all, so honored, Andrea, that you're here having this conversation with me. I'm hoping that and believing that we can get a little vulnerable here with our own struggles with self-love and self-acceptance and self-compassion. And I know I can do that because you are so masterful at creating a safe space for me.
Mm.
So I'm just, yeah, we're hearting each other for those not watching on YouTube. Speaking of that, if you want to watch on YouTube, I will include a link so you can see our beautiful faces there too. Okay, so Andrea, would you please introduce yourself? Let our listeners know a little bit about who you are and the work that you do in the world.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Isabel, for having me. This is such a gift. I've just adored you ever since I met you. Wow, and meeting you, that's just a part of my journey. For me, it was, man, living wild and free in my 20s. And then right around the age of 30, buying a house on my own. And I think it was, so I had moved back to the Midwest after being a globetrotter and being on my own and following my bliss and journaling and moving my body and really embracing freedom and self-discovery in my 20s. And then I came back to the Midwest of the United States, where I'm from, near where I'm from. And I think so that's a little bit of there's a story there that I have about people in the Midwest and expectations. And then I bought a house and then I met a man. And so I think buying a house sent me into the patterning, the old programming of like scarcity, scarcity. Let's just go with parents programming around money challenges. So there was that. And then I met the man that I eventually married, and his people to me felt cerebral and logical, and my woo, explorative, curious self, I didn't feel welcome. And so where I'm going with this, what has brought me to this interview today is that process, right in my 30s, that whole there was so much pain that was brought up that I think I used all the coping mechanisms to like shove back down and try to not feel,
Mm.
that I ended up choosing a really safe job. I think I was moving into like anxiety and worry and really playing small to try to be something that I thought the world needed me to be. And that is when then I chose a lot of safety. So for 10 more years, so like all through my 30s, was just choosing to play in this box that I think I created responding to life. And then at the end of those 10 years, I spiraled. I spiraled hard, hit a breaking point, and called a sister of ours, Anahita. For those of you who don't know Anahita June, I'm just so glad I called her. And she was like, hey, Andrea, I don't know who you've been the last 7+ years. I recommend you go and study spiritual psychology. That's going to help you wake up to what's holding you back. And then that ended up leading me, that was very nourishing and eye-opening and heart-opening. And that led me to transformational leadership, which led me to shadow work, which led me to energy healing, which led me to you.
Mm.
And to find people like me who are willing to kind of get under the hood and see what's making us tick, see what's gearing us away from that authentic nature. And then because that work was so deep and profound for me, I was like, I want to find other sisters and other humans who are really feeling stuck,
Mm.
feeling like, oh my God, is this all there is? There's got to be more, but it feels like this is all there is. And I'm panic. There's a panic. There's like an underlying panic going on. And yeah, choosing to be a guide to bring those people home. And I call myself the legacy liberator because I really feel like there's a love legacy inside of all of us. And that when we shed those coping mechanisms and really get back into our hearts, that legacy starts to like get brighter and brighter and brighter. And we become better mothers. We become better sisters. We become better friends. We just feel more self-expressed and full. And whole and worthy and wise. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about self-love today. And I just really think that that is a big crux point for all of us who want to wake up and live our dreams, live a life that feels on fire, fulfilling, and on purpose. So I tried to do the Cliff Notes version.
Mhm. So good. What's really standing out to me about what you said is you wanted to get under the hood, and not everyone wants to get under the hood.
Mm, yeah.
I don't know, actually, is that true? I'm curious. Do we have some people out there in our lives that don't want to get under the hood? What do you think?
Mhm. I really strongly feel that that's true.
Mm,
Um, I don't know if my parents are going to listen to this interview,
mhm,
but we recently experienced a death in our family, in my immediate family, and I just think that it's not easy to feel the crunchy upset feelings sometimes, and I just think our society is maybe especially America, well, because I'm American, I'm just going to relate to Americans. I just feel like numbing is such a huge part of our society. And whatever it is, shopping, just a lot of avoidance techniques, shopping, alcohol, scrolling, I think that we just have, I think that wanting to get under the hood means I'm ready to get uncomfortable
mm.
and feel some of those things I've been avoiding feeling. So I don't know. Sometimes I talk to my clients and I acknowledge them for being part of the 10%
Yeah.
that's really willing to just take off all those band-aids and start letting those wounds heal. But we got to it's going to hurt to take the band-aid off maybe initially. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think change can be uncomfortable and sometimes painful.
Mhm. Yeah.
I know I'm just calling myself in here about around my coping mechanisms because I like to avoid discomfort.
Mhm.
Uh, and I like to open the hood. I'm part of the 10% who likes to go into shadow work. And I also am like, oh, I don't like that one. Can we open someone else's hood first?
Yeah.
Um, so I've just, hand on heart, and also those listening, I know that this is going to be an activating conversation to you. So just like check yourself about your own willingness to go under your hood, because that's really what the invitation is today around self-love. Because also our culture has this thing about self-love that it's all like rainbows and butterflies and just accept yourself. Um, but I would love to turn us in a direction of like, it's not always that. Like
Mhm.
it's often so messy self-love.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's a
Yeah.
practice, and it's something we
Mhm.
do on purpose. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, so I just want to maybe start with naming some of the parts of ourselves that we find difficult to love and
Mhm.
that we are working on it, because both you and I are on that path. Does that sound uncomfortable enough for us to kind of model
Yeah.
what we're talking about?
Yes. Yes. I,
Yeah.
I I use the phrase crunchy a lot, and
Yeah.
I'm like, crunchy, maybe that sounds weird. But there's smooth peanut butter and crunchy peanut butter. And I don't know. Sometimes it feels like things just feel a little crunchy. Yeah. A little rough around the edges, uncomfortable, maybe like there's the soft side of Velcro and then there's the scratchy side of Velcro.
Mm,
It
mm,
feels like, yeah. And so you and I had spoken a little bit about aging.
yeah.
And I'm 46. I have a lot of expression in my face. And I remember getting a facial as like a 30, maybe I was 35, 36. And I was saying to the facial, she's like massaging me or whatever. And I just said, man, these 11s, like the two kind of divots, the vertical lines between your eyebrows. I said, man, I didn't even know that they were deep until my wedding day, or looking back at my wedding pictures. So I was age 32. And I was like, wow, those are really deep. As I'm looking at the wedding photos. And this facial person was like, yeah, you would have had to start getting injections in your 20s if you had wanted to not have these lines. And I just remembered being like, I don't know, it felt just like it was a weird moment of just saying, wow, okay. First, yeah, I just was like, well, I can't go back in time. And so, what if just from this moment forward, all of this depth in my forehead, around my eyes, around my lips, and coming down but from my nose to my chin, like, what if those lines are just me living a really expressive life, like a really full life? And when people speak, I react with my forehead. My whole face responds. And what if that's just me? What if I don't play the compare and despair game, and look at Hollywood and look at magazines and think to myself, wow, as a 46-year-old, I guess I'm not supposed to have facial wrinkles, you know?
I really do. And I love that you're moving your facial muscles as we say this. What is that about? The compare of, what is that about? It's because it's not necessarily something we do for men, although maybe some of us, put
Mhm,
on our faces for men, but it seems like we're
mhm.
often doing it for one another and comparing ourselves to,
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah. I think we can tie it back to the ticker tape in our heads in that's really connected to body response. So it's in our bodies and in our minds. And I really think that tape that's playing, we get to work with whose voice is it? Is this the voice of society? Is this the voice of my parents? Is this the voice, or one parent typically? Is this the voice of a coach? Is this a coach? Is this the voice of a teacher I had? Or maybe I was bullied, or maybe there was a peer group that kept making me feel separate. And then so we really get to work with, where did the ticker tape come from? And sometimes it's not so obvious.
Hmm.
When we're talking about this aging, facial lines, are they beautiful? Are they not beautiful? I think sometimes it's just like the ticker tape is really embedded. It's all over commercials, it's all over magazines, it's all over social media. It's all, this expectation of beauty being something flawless and kind of plastic.
Hmm.
That might sound a little judgy, but it feels almost like this plasticity of a non-moving forehead, non-moving forehead, no wrinkles around the eyes. It almost just feels like it's just behind, it's really built into like capitalism, and beauty is outside of you, and there's such an expectation so that we'll buy more things, so we'll be more easily manipulated. I don't want to get too political here.
So
But
what's the alternative? So we have these voices in our heads that aren't necessarily ours. So what's the alternative to that? How do we either not listen to them or listen to something else?
Mhm. Well, I'd love to tie it back to what you said about getting under the hood. Are you even willing to look at your own programming, your own thought structures, the root stock of the
Hmm.
thoughts that are motivating your actions and your beliefs about yourself? Are you willing to look at your beliefs? So that's the getting under the hood part. Like, gosh, I don't want to spend, hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month on all of these things that I either rub or swallow to look different than I am, or to not age. But am I willing to change anything about it? Do I want to change any behavior? So we really get to look at that, get under that hood, get
And
uncomfortable.
so for the listener who is like, no, like blessing,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
There's no
Mhm. Yeah.
like no judgment,
Mhm.
like the clarity of that no, like especially if it's a full body no, I'm not in a place where I want to get under the hood. Like, and for
Yeah.
those
Mhm.
who are ready to get under the hood, I,
Mhm.
that's me. I am like, okay,
Mhm.
but for me, it's about creating safety,
Right.
especially if I'm going to get under the hood, and be witness in
Mhm.
that darkness, which is also a big part for me about if someone can love me and my 11s or my messy parts, it helps me feel that love for myself. But in order for that to happen, I have to feel so safe. And if I'm not safe, then I'm clamping that hood back down,
Yeah.
you know?
So this feels so true. And that's why I love, so after meeting you, within months or a year of meeting you, I got to attend one of your women's circles.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm going to get emotional right now, but the level of women creating a safe space and holding each other and like willing to be vulnerable, and I'm totally welling up right now. It's so beautiful. And I think that when women really come together and we're willing to be seen in our messy parts,
Mm.
and in our celebration, like we're not afraid to celebrate and we're not afraid to get really real and talk about some of the upset feelings or some of the disappointment or some of the crunchy parts, the messiness, the messy feelings, the messy parts. I think that when we're really, really ready for that, maybe, maybe we're not fully ready. When we put ourselves in those situations to be seen and also to receive being seen and
Mm.
be real and celebrate and cry and feel. I just think that that's a huge part of the recipe for me personally, anyway. And a lot of the people I work with, I really think that that's a big stepping stone to the up leveling and to the self acceptance and self love. If we really want to go there, if we want to have that.
And I'll just stack on top of that, that it's the receiving of the witnessing, but it's the giving of witnessing as well. When we learn that our witnessing of another woman or our child or our partner, that
Mm.
that is enough, and that that is a lot of giving, and that it takes something from us to just hold warm
Mm.
space, that we don't have to actually fix one another. We're offering that we just by loving someone, just
Mm.
like receiving someone else's love, it can in itself be transformative. I really
Mhm.
have to remind myself about this with my 12-year-old daughter right now, because and I remember being so annoyed at my mom because she'd look at me and she'd just like, start to, fuss with my hair and
Yeah.
annoyed me. And she does it, I'm a 42-year-old grown up. And every
Mhm.
time she sees me, she's like, licking her fingers and like getting something off my face. And I love it. It's so endearing to me now, but as a child, and I do the same thing to my daughter. I see her in the morning and I say, "Did you do your homework?" I want everything to be clean and okay and tidy for her. And so I'm just reminding myself that like this is true. I have a sense of capacity for my clients to hold space for them because it's what I'm supposed to do.
Mhm.
But in my mothering role,
Mhm.
it's hard for me because I just want her to be okay. But then
Yeah.
I'm taking care of my own needs.
Yes.
And I'm making it seem like I'm taking care of her needs, but really she has a need to be witnessed and seen and unconditionally loved too, and not
Mhm.
fixed. I mean, there's a
Mhm.
there's a place for that in mothering, but
Mhm.
really mothering is a lot about holding space and being
Mhm.
the ground, Mama Gaia, for our people. And it's not always easy if we don't have it for ourselves.
Wow. So many things that you just said are hitting my motherhood experience on so many levels of like how much of me is coming from how I was parented and how much of me, even in all my spiritual psychology, transformational leadership, shadow work, energy healing, being amazing at holding space for people who hire me. And then it's like, wow, isn't it so interesting how the programming, I know I keep using that word for us listeners, but I really feel like there's just a deep, deep level of, DNA programming, like so nature programming, intergenerational, and then also nurture programming. And so, gosh, sometimes I hover above myself as I'm showing up in my motherhood role or my romantic partnership role. And I'm like, whoa, that is some programming that I know you've worked through, but how are you being right now, Andrea? It is really interesting.
Yeah. So let's
Very
just
real.
invite our listeners to notice for themselves? Like, what are you noticing coming up around your own programming? What are you noticing about the way you love yourself? So if we can turn that back on ourselves, like, can we, and it's a real question, can we witness ourselves? So when I'm looking in the mirror, which I did this morning, and I have literally a zit in the middle of my forehead, a bright red dot that, Andrea, you probably maybe didn't even see until I'm pointing to it right now, right?
I did
But
not. I did not.
yeah, but it's like I come on and it's the first thing I see. So rather than race to the bathroom to cover it up, can I witness myself feeling, what is the emotion? Embarrassed. I think it's embarrassed. Can I just
Mm.
witness that in myself without fixing it? Notice and witness the desire to fix it. Um, and really just be like, have that love and compassion for myself that I would really so easily have for you or for anyone else. And it's really hard to show up in a public space with a zit in the middle of your forehead. And like, go Isabel for like doing the hard thing and showing up and then talking about it and making it so obvious to everyone who is watching or listening. And also really amplifying the ripple effects of that. Like, can we sit in our beauty even when we have a blemish in the middle of our forehead, and can we love all the parts of ourselves that are embarrassed or ashamed or shy or whatever it is without putting them away, but welcoming them to the table and saying, yeah, you're here too.
Yes. Amen. Aho, ashe.
Mm-hmm.
Raising my hands. Yes, please.
And then I want to bring it back to legacy work because
Mhm.
for me, this is really legacy work. I remember inheriting my mom's the way she thinks about herself. So my mother would, I remember viscerally being a little girl, maybe like between 6 and 8,
Mhm.
and seeing my mom in the bathroom looking at herself in the mirror naked, and she really loved the person that she saw in the mirror. She didn't say anything. She didn't tell, she wasn't doing affirmations, but when she looked at herself and the way she touched her face and the way
Mhm.
she cared for herself, it was so loving. And I inherited that. I inherited that sense of like, oh, I'm beautiful. Um, and not because of the way I really look, but because of the way I feel when I look at myself. So not that I am beautiful, more that I am beauty. And that's really what I felt from her, is like, I am beauty. And so that's how I walk around the world. And so now I carry on that legacy for my daughter, who I'm, intending to inherit that. And so this work is so powerful. So I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about legacy work, and what that means to you.
Yeah. Yes. And we talked a little bit earlier about could there be a skill or a tool? Like, could there be a takeaway from, all that we share today? And I already feel like there have been so many. If I were in the listener's seat listening, I'd be like, ooh, I'm going to put up some post-it notes about Belle and Andrea were sharing. Um, Co-regulation.
Yeah.
So an opportunity to come back to home base, to homeostasis, to like, where's my inner peace? Where's my inner guidance when I'm in the midst of life and I'm in a situation where I'm like, ooh, I do not like that. Or, whoa, that is not what I expected. Or, darn it, I'm running late and I can feel, my heart rate raising and, or, ooh, I don't like the way she's looking at me. And the story is starting and I can feel physical responses happening in my body. So co-regulation.
Mm.
Often as in the parenting world, we talk about how we as parents or caregivers, whatever role you play, we have an opportunity to help a child who's becoming emotionally dysregulated. Like they're having some reactions to life instead of being in their heart and in their homeostasis and then responding to life. So they're becoming reactive. So I just want to talk a little bit about what if what if we could look at what's happening in our body and realize that there's a part of us who might be in a story. Maybe it's a younger version of us who had something disappointing happen when they were younger. And that part of us is feeling the dysregulation. And that part of us is like angry or feeling othered or experiencing embarrassment or shame or rejection. And what if in that moment we could be able to dial into that little person in us? For me, that little Andrea who had that disappointing experience when younger. And what if I could just go inside and or go into my visualization abilities, imagination, and just give her, hold her hand, or take some deep breaths with her, or say with her in my mind, like, you are loved, you are not enough, you are meant to be right here, right now, and everything's going to be okay. I'm with you. So this actually was something I was pondering on a walk today, this concept of co-regulation. And what if it's not it's an internal job, but what if it's not us doing it with another human? What if it's us doing it with our, you and I have talked about the inner sister or the inner, the archetype, these various archetypes. Like, what if there's a part of you that's just having a slightly different experience? There's adult Andrea who's done all of this reflection and inner work and shadow, looking at the shadow and transforming and reawakening and, spiritual psychology. There's this mature Andrea who's realizing that some of those reactions are no longer functional for me. Like, I want to have deeper intimacy with Isabel, and yet part of our discussion maybe sent me into some kind of panic. Can I sit with the part of me that is having that reactivity? And can I co-regulate myself? But really, it's me, the adult Andrea, with that part of me that's hurting or that's disappointed or that's reliving something from the past because of what you and I might have shared. So that, yeah, that's feeling really present for me, just to talk about maybe self co-regulation, inner self co-regulation.
Oh my goodness, I love this. So you mentioned the inner sister. So I just want to tell our listeners a little bit about who that is. So I, over the past, I would say 3 years, have begun to cultivate a relationship with my inner loving sister. So, and she is a person she is a part of me that knows me so well, more than anyone else possibly could. And she just loves me. So she does, and she's fierce. My inner sister is fierce. So she calls me back in when I want to check out, but she also knows me so well that she knows sometimes Isabel needs to check out, because if she doesn't, it's going to get really not good. Um, so I actually teach this inside my membership, the Mothers Empowerment Sisterhood. So if you're curious about that, then you can head on over to isabelbridges.com and learn more about that. But we can co-regulate with ourselves, with that part of ourselves that is like at the center of the storm. And it takes skill to do that. It
Mhm.
takes, it's something that we have to learn, because we often co-regulate with the most dysregulated parts of ourselves. And because that's something that we learned, right? Yeah. So, yeah, it's not always easy, but it gets easier once we practice.
Mm. Yeah. I'm so with you. I'm so with you. But maybe we are the generation
Yeah.
That teaches the next generation through modeling, through messing it up, and then maybe apologizing, and then modeling, and then messing up, and then apologizing, modeling. And maybe slowly there's less messing up, and then there's more like, ooh, I'm remembering this thing I'm practicing of this self co-regulation, with that part of me that is still and aware and patient and present with all that is my highest good, the most aligned possible me that there is. I can align with that part of me, you know?
And just like our relationships with other people take time and energy, that relationship with that part, it takes time and energy too. So
Mhm.
are we willing to devote those resources to her, meaning our inner loving sister? So, yeah. Well, we are slowly tapering towards the end of our time today, Andrea. Is there anything else you want to make sure that you say before we close?
Um, well, I would love to share with our viewers when I came into this work, the words that it really felt like this work is about shifting from an old story or an old programming, into our best self, into our, the woman that I feel truly called to be, the woman that I feel, you know, I want to open up and be her. So I have a free video series it's at AndreaLuzon.com. I think if you click free gift on the top, it'll give you access to those. They're 10 very short videos, and you would get one each day. And it's just like a little tiny tip or gift or process to support you in like releasing those stuck parts, blessing them. They're still going to be a part of us, but, loving those parts, those maybe more stuck areas of us, loving them, nurturing them, and maybe having a process to slowly shift out of that and moving into that greatest expression that we are.
Mm,
So yeah, AndreaLuzon.com
and we'll have the
to
link
get
to
that.
that in the show notes as well. So for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so my last question, Andrea, is what is a next empowering action you'd like to invite our listeners to take?
Wow. I really think that there's less than 60 seconds between something that surprises you and who you're like the next step. Like there's less than 60 seconds. Sometimes there's like 10 seconds or there's very little time when we're surprised. It's typically a body reaction. So my invitation is just to slowly become aware of the space between the stimulus and the response. And for just whether it's breath or awareness or, tapping your leg or um, in DBT, there's the five senses, like, what are five things you're noticing that you're shocked about something or you're upset by something, scan the room. What are five things I see? What are four things I smell? Or just to go through those five senses and do like a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What's one thing I taste in my mouth? Like right now, I can taste coffee.
Mhm.
But so move through the senses, and by the time you're done with that, you will be grounded. You will be grounded. You'll be back in full you, and then it will be not a reactive you. It'll be a responding you. I'm now responding from a more grounded self, like a whole self person, instead of that, like, I'm surprised, and how we tend that programming of that fight, flight, freeze is often just so fast. They're like pasted on top of each other, stimulus and reaction. So just slowly see if you can run an experiment in your life and find the space between those two.
Mm, that's so good. That's so, so, so good. And when you do that, you can let Andrea know on her socials. And I'd love to know as well how this practice is going for you. So, Andrea, where can they find you so that they can let you know how they're creating that space between surprise and reaction?
Awesome. I would love to hear from people. I'm pretty present on Instagram at Legacy Liberation Coaching. all one word, Legacy Liberation Coaching. But if if anything changes in my where my heart is taking me, the website of AndreaLuzon.com, Andrea Luzon.com, you can definitely fill out the contact card, and I will get right back to you. So I'd love to hear how the space between and rediscovering your love legacy is going for our listeners.
Okay, Andrea, thank you so much. Thank you to our listeners. Until next time, take care. Bye.
Thank you.